Hello, boys and girls. Today we have a video entitled Why the Liberal Mainstream Media is Fascist. Actually, more saying why we know they're fascists, not why they're fascists, because other than the fact they're leftists, we don't really know why they're being fascist. But, you know, this whole thing about it, first of all, go back to the 2012 elections when Lois Lerner and the IRS silenced opposition parties by limiting their statuses, keeping them from talking, and shutting up people that had a difference of opinion. The IRS had to admit that they did it. The IRS had to pay restitution to those people. Who knows, some question about whether it went all the way to Obama. He had to know. Especially come to light all this stuff about the spying and all that. You know, Lisa Page, Strzok and Page, the text between them two, POTUS wants to know everything we're doing. But let's talk about the liberal mainstream media, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, even to an extent some of the ones out there who are on local channels. The local channels, usually not quite as bad. The 24-hour news sources. But I mean, every day for 2.5 years, they lied. They had pundits on saying everything under God's green earth about how Donald Trump was an agent for Russia. Donald Trump definitely did it. The documents just prove that he did it before we even see the results. And not once were they right, obviously. But, I mean, the whole thing is, not once were they journalists. And the real problem with that, at least, you know, Rachel Maddow. Let's take Rachel Maddow as a side example. Rachel Maddow is a opinion journalist, per se. At least she does kind of, to an extent, admit that. I'm doing opinion. If anybody's got a question where her political loyalties lie, you're not paying attention. So is Rachel Maddow considered in the same field as the other people's supposed news sources at CNN? No. She shouldn't be held to that same standard. But in our Constitution and in our laws, I'm driving, so I'm paying attention out here, guys. In our Constitution and in our laws, the media in itself is given special rights. They're not giving us rights just because they're special people, or you're special. They're giving those rights because they have responsibilities that go with those rights. And when you say I am a unbiased news source and it's an obvious lie and you're not an unbiased news source, you're abusing those special rights and privileges that we give you as a country. Which makes you, I mean, I'm not going to say you're on the same level as the government in itself, as far as, you know, the government being fascist, you know, when they're totalitarian in nature and take away your rights of free speech and stuff like that and act in those fascist manners, it's different. But to the same extent, we give the press almost more freedom than we do anybody else in this country. I have the right to free speech. The press goes beyond that. So yes, they have a responsibility. And are they living up their responsibility? Most of them, no. oh, somebody's going to say something bad about Donald Trump. Quick, get them in here. Is it verified? We don't care if it's verified. We can just point at them and say, well, they're the ones that said it. I forgot the name of whoever it was, but there was a guy who was in the Trump campaign for a short time. He got out of the Trump campaign. He was really very low level, probably never even spoke to Donald Trump, but went out, I guess, at one point and said he knows that Donald Trump colluded with Russia or whatever he had said. And he garnered something like 12 hours or 8 hours one day total combined time on the Sunday news shows. And he was the first person in history to garner that much time on these liberal news shows. And the very last show he did, at the end of the day, whoever was the commentator on that show actually did press him a little bit to what his proof is or how he knew this. Because every other one was like, oh, tell us more. Oh, tell us more. And they were like, well, you know, where do you come up with this? Or do you have more proof that you can show us than just you said it? And on the last one, you know, they actually pressed him a little bit. And, oh, well, I don't have any problem. This is my opinion. That's what's going on. And it was like, not a one of them were embarrassed. Not a one of them retracted anything. It was, I mean, it's like so pathetic. It's not funny. And they actually look at this like, I mean, journalists hold themselves up like doctors or something. We're journalists. We bring the truth. We keep America free. And what they've done in the past couple years is an absolute laughable joke. And I think there needs to be, I mean, this is horrible to say. It's horrible to say in a country that's free like America. And part of that freedom is the fact we have a press that can say something bad about the president of the United States without getting punished for it, like in Russia or Venezuela or Cuba or something. But there needs to be a standard to where they can't just say anything. I mean, they've just been absolute, literally downright lying through their teeth for 2.5 years. I mean, CNN, the night that Trump got elected, was saying as bad of things that night before he had been in office a day, before he had gotten inaugurated, were saying, you know, practically as bad things as what they're saying now. And there has to be some kind of standard, and it has to be a way to hold people to some kind of standard, to these organizations who are given so much power, so much freedom, and so much levity in our, well, and that's been taken away by the people to some extent. Nobody trusts the media anymore. They've done that to themselves. But at some point, should there be a litmus test of going in and reviewing their honesty over a certain amount of time on whether or not they're able to continue forward with those same protections. And what I'm saying is, and I know it'd be tough to do, you are a media given the freedom of the press and the freedom of being able to do so. If you abuse that, you don't have so you can be a press all you want to. You can go out there and say lies or say whatever, because you still have a freedom of speech in America. But even if you're CNN or Fox News, if they do it, you prove X number of times, you lie, you misrepresent, you don't retract or do the legal things you're supposed to do when you do make an error, then you're not given the same freedoms as the press anymore. At this point now, you're nothing but an individual citizen who has the right to go out there on Facebook or on wherever and blog and say whatever you want to say. And I mean, to think that we are as free as we are because of our freedom of the press, that's a very difficult thing to say. I mean, to say that you're going to limit some of those freedoms, but we're not going to limit those freedoms from the press. we're going to limit those freedoms from people who don't take that responsibility of being the press. At that point, you know, do opinion. I mean, Maddow, Hannity, Limbaugh. And you know, so there are other left and right both out there. Should they get the same protections under the law and the Constitution as we give somebody who's supposed to be an unbiased press? That's kind of the point I was making. And is it the time to move forward and actually making that change? Because it has gotten ridiculous when, you know, 20% of America trusts the press. They've been lying a lot. And they, oh no, we're unbiased and we're that. 20% of America trusts you. Bullshit. It speaks for itself. You damn morons. But that's my thought process about, you know, they're given the rights and privileges. When you abuse that right, it's almost the same as the government's abusing its right. We give the press more rights than any other individual person in this country. They can break the law to an extent. The Pentagon Papers was a perfect example of it. They took secret documents and published them because they aren't the ones that stole them, per se. A police officer can't do that. We give them literally more rights, more protections than a law enforcement officer. Think about that. And you abuse those rights? Come on.